Welcome to Here Comes the Boom, a Kentucky basketball recruiting podcast brought to you by KSR and KSR Plus. It's been a crazy week in college basketball recruiting, especially for Kentucky. There haven't been a ton of commitments, but a lot of guys are starting to cut their list. We're going to get into all that soon. Be sure and go and subscribe to KSR Plus. Subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel, and let's talk about four big top recruits for Kentucky that cut their list in the past week. Starting with Tyran Stokes, number one player in the class. You know who he is. Forward out of Notre Dame High School in Sherman Oaks, California. He is now down to a Final Three of Kentucky, Kansas, and Oregon. He previously had a Final Five, so he cut a couple of schools from that list, USC and Louisville. So now it's these three schools, and Kentucky continues to come up the most in conversations. As I put on the KS board, I'm not expecting any sort of reclass at this moment. I expect him to be a fall 2026 enrollee when he makes his decision. So right now, those are the three schools, and I would still not trade Kentucky's position for any of these other schools, Kansas or Oregon, that is. So be sure to stay tuned to his recruitment. And that recruitment is very much tied to Caleb Holt, who I put an update on the KS board. I've heard from sources that Stokes and Holt have discussed the potential of playing together. Kentucky is the only school on both of their lists. I still have questions, as do people close to their recruitments, about the viability of having both of those players commit to Kentucky. I know that NIL-wise, those are two players that have the highest NIL price in the class, and that could make it difficult, especially when you have schools that are only going after one of them so they can dedicate a little more of their NIL to each individual player. But yeah, those are real conversations that are happening. And now let's get back into talking about three other players that cut their list, including Kentucky on them. Talking about Christian Collins. He's down to a Final Three of Kentucky, USC, and UCLA. As I said last week, I currently peg USC as the front runner in this recruitment. Kentucky and UCLA have worked hard in this recruitment, but I'm expecting a decision to happen pretty soon, sometime before the early signing period. And right now, I like USC's chances better than the other two schools. Then you got Baba Oladotun, another 6'8" forward. He's out of Maryland, and he is down to a Final Four of Kentucky, Arkansas, Georgetown, and Maryland. I was a little surprised to see Virginia Tech not make the cut, but this isn't a huge surprise to see these four schools. Virginia Tech was the only other school that he took official visits to. Recently finished up his Arkansas official visit, and that's the school that's gaining the most buzz of late. A lot of talk for Arkansas in his recruitment. Where Kentucky stands, I'll talk about it a little bit more after I get to Maximo Adams, but both of those recruitments will kind of depend on timeline to see if Kentucky makes a big push for either of them. So let's talk about Maximo Adams, small forward out of Sierra Canyon High School in California. He is down to Kentucky, North Carolina, Texas, and Michigan State. I'm hearing a lot of UNC in this recruitment with some Texas, not a lot of Kentucky talk. So let's talk about both Baba and Maximo, where things stand. Caleb Holt and Tyran Stokes are pretty clearly priorities for Kentucky in this class. That's not to say Baba and Maximo aren't priorities, but I would say they're lower on Kentucky's list of priorities. So if Kentucky is to land either of these players, I think they're going to need to show a little bit more investment in their recruitments, especially Maximo, who I think is going to be making a decision soon. You never know when these kids will officially announce their decisions, but right now it seems to be an early signing for Maximo as things stand today. Now let's talk for a minute about, I want to give a shout out to our good friend Andy Ludicky from myperfectfranchise.net. Andy's a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. If you are wanting to find a way out of corporate America, wanting a side hustle business, or a way to diversify, reach out to Andy, as he's got a ton of knowledge in this world. And best of all, his services are 100% free to you always. Head to myperfectfranchise.net to learn more, or you can text or call Andy at 404-973-9901. All right, let's talk about the rest of Kentucky's targets. You can go to KSR Plus. I ran through most of Kentucky's targets over on a story yesterday. We've talked about the 4 guys that cut their lists. All eyes continue to be on Tyran Stokes and Caleb Holt. But let's talk about a few other guys. Jordan Smith Jr., his recruitment's been very quiet, and he's remained adamant that he'll be signing in the spring. So this one could take a little bit of time, but he's down to a final 6 of Kentucky, Duke, Arkansas, Georgetown, Indiana, and Syracuse. He recently took an unofficial visit to Syracuse, but he's already taken officials to all of the schools on his list. I would say that Duke is the school coming up the most in his recruitment. I would say they're pretty well positioned in this one, but Arkansas and Syracuse are two other schools to watch, while Kentucky could make things interesting timing-wise if things fall in the right direction come the spring. But right now, I wouldn't trade Duke's position for anyone else. Deron Rippey Jr., he's Kentucky's top point guard target in the class, and he's taken a bunch of official visits this fall. I would say that NC State, Tennessee, and Duke are the 3 schools that I'm hearing come up the most. And there's been a lot of speculation about Rippey having an NIL deal with Adidas. He played on the Adidas circuit over the summer, and so that makes NC State and Tennessee intriguing options. But Duke's been a school that's made a strong impression on Rippey throughout his recruitment. Still expecting him to cut his list soon, and I would expect Kentucky to potentially make that list. But right now, I think they have some work to do in that recruitment. Then the last guy I want to talk about, we've basically run through all of Kentucky's targets this class, is Erfan Dion. He is expected to commit on November 19th. And I've placed a prediction on the Rivals on 3 recruiting prediction machine for him to land at Houston. They've basically carried the momentum for most of the summer, most of the fall, and they got his final official visit. Kentucky would really have to make up some ground to land Erfan, according to my sources. And that's really where things stand with everyone. My final thought today is it's about time for the early signing period. So guys are making their decisions. I'm not panicking about where Kentucky stands, not having landed a recruit, because I believe it's 13 of 15 guys on this roster will still have eligibility after this season. You may lose a few of those guys, but Kentucky's expected to return a bulk of this roster next year, so they can afford to be selective with who they get in this 2026 recruiting class. And then you always have the transfer portal, which Mark Pope has relied on heavily over the last couple of years. So we'll have you covered on KSR Plus with all the latest news on Kentucky basketball recruiting. Be sure to go and subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel, and we'll see you again soon.